Ask him for work.
So let's continue with the next session, last session before lunch. The title of this session is Audience Science. So we thought we really need you to come to the stage now and leave the comfort zone of the audience, yeah. And shall we? I mean, we found it. We would find it relatively stupid to talk about audience science and sitting on the stage and talking to an audience. Yeah? So you really have to come and take your chair and enter the stage or sit next to the stage. This is imperative now. Yeah. So I will take this chair. Also, we thought we turn it a little bit around. Sure, there are many questions. It's a relatively new concept or idea. You might recognize it. In the first place, we translate the concept of citizen science into the field of culture and creativity. As simple as this, as complicated as this, because it produces different kind of subjectivities that are not necessarily the same ones. So the question is, what can we learn from the experience of citizen science, and how can we translate these experiences into the specific context of art and culture, where audiences play a very, very peculiar role that is different to the role of citizens in relationship to research and policy making. So it's not that we have any recipe or proposal how to do this, but I think we have a lot of experience and understanding of the challenges and how we address them. So I think maybe we turn it around, so rather than having the kind of abstract discussion that is defining the concept and so on and so forth, rather than having this at the beginning, we do this at the end, yeah? And we start with concrete examples, experiences, interesting contributions. So please feel free to be interpellated and called to contribute to this. I would like to ask first Andrea to introduce the installation that you have been setting up in one of the rooms behind the Galleria, no? Room 19, yes. And you should all visit this, but Andrea will tell you more about it, and maybe also a little bit about the COBE project, because we really think that artistic intelligence combined with audience science has the potential to produce a completely different roles and relationships that undoes the binaries of creatives or artists and their audiences. But I'm very curious what you have been setting up here over the last days.
Hi everyone, Andrea here from Rome Fine Arts Academy. So it's not Finance Academy for the good or the bad, but yeah, Fine Arts. And I'm here today with Alberto Gatti, that is the coordinator of electronic music composition course at La Spezia Music Conservatory, and Massimiliano is affiliated with L'Aquila Music Conservatory, also a researcher for COBE. So what's COBE? COBE is basically a platform, a cultural broker, I would say, that we designed over two Horizon 2020 research projects, and is basically an artificial intelligence cultural broker that helps to navigate vast corpuses of knowledge. The idea is not so much to have artificial intelligence as a generative tool. able to or unable to generate poetry and whatever other content, but to use machine learning and automation to analyze and extract knowledge from a repository of interdisciplinary papers, articles, research catalog expositions. And the way we facilitate access to this knowledge is basically by building graphs made by paragraphs, media, extrapolated from these documents, but most of all, identifying relations. And today we are taking a small fraction of the skills and approach that we developed over the past 3 years for this installation, where the knowledge is not so much articles, but is the knowledge of this community. So all the people that are here for the summit and that will join the installation. In this sense, when you will enter the room where the installation is placed, there will be a question on the screen, and you will be able to decide whether to reply or not. And all the replies that we are gathering over these 2 days will be part of this knowledge graph. And it will be possible to navigate this graph, understanding the similarities and diversions on the topics and themes for each of the reply. But most of all, it will be, I think, interesting to see how each reply relates to each other, especially if we think about potentially isolated practices conducted in separate settings, how they relate to each other. So we see automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence as a way to connect people, to establish relations, but most of all to uncover existing relations that are not so much evident. And that's the installation. The name is Tesela, and I hope you will join us during today. Thank you, Florian.
Just to take it from another side, is that when I started my career, I ended up working as a consultant for the European Commission in a project where we were basically looking at statistics in Leonardo. Leonardo was a program then, and we were looking at those statistics. And one of the things that we got there was basically, we found a research that the European Commission was doing on the influence of songs on the radio in traffic. Yeah, and so, of course, everybody has this image of like, okay, the beat basically makes people move in a different way. So there was also experiments done, like what happens when people start listening to other types of music, and how does that influence traffic? And so there was statistics collected about how do you do that? You know, how does it influence it? And I think just thinking back now in the way of how we started thinking about audiences, is that what has never been done actually is to take those kind of statistics and use that as a starting point and say, okay, if that is our audiences and this is the music that we send into these very private spheres where people are mostly and actually listening to music, how can we relate in a different way to those kind of audiences? And just taking up those kind of statistics, and yeah, in an undercover way maybe play as an artist with those statistics, and then see what is happening in certain types of projects and experiments and pilots that can be done. I see potential for that in terms of audience science.
I think this would directly relate to the work that Giulio and Vikash are doing in the...
Julia is sitting there.
Yeah, here you are, exactly. Yeah, what?
Just to add, I mean, I think I'm loud enough. No, oh, damn it.
Live stream.
Not for the live.
Yeah, okay. I think just to reflect back on what you're saying, I think Spotify does that very well, and I think they have a very, very good business model around it. So,
So what will you do different
Yeah.
with tips?
when it comes to understanding the people moods and behavior while they are, I think we can. What do you think, Giulio? When it comes to
Or maybe can you introduce the project a little bit, because I know you did it already
yeah.
yesterday morning, but I think there are many new people.
Sure.
Maybe it makes sense to briefly recapitulate what you are actually promoting, and how would it also relate, or do you see a possibility that this relates under the umbrella of audience science to, for example, what Andrea just introduced? And
Okay. So, Giulio, go ahead. I think I've been talking enough already. So.
Yeah. So what we're doing now is we are building a platform to analyze event dynamics based on data. Let's say continuously provided data through APIs. So something that is more like how can I say, in the cloud. Okay. We need to integrate that with more like local data down to earth, like during events. Specifically, it could be surveys, something else, I don't know. So surveys is a sort of audience science. And of course, it has, it can have statistical meaning, and it kind of narrows down the fuzziness of just cloud-based data. I don't know if I'm too vague, but that's to understand that audience science can actually give a proper and actual meaning to the analysis. How to do it, it's still a work in progress, but that's the approach that we are envisioning in our platform.
I don't know if this is a turn. I can wait. I can go. Okay. No, first of all, I'm very surprised that we're talking about this. I didn't understand from the title that this was the conversation. So I spent my last 5 years working on citizen science, so financing, supporting, and studying more than 150 projects of citizen science. So this is very nice, and I didn't think about the connection with Pacesetters, so that's good. Second thing is that if you look at the citizen science debate and definition, I'm more in the what is called extreme citizen science. So the fact that citizens, which is a problematic term because there are a lot of people that do not feel citizens in their societies, blah, 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 participate in the research by shaping their research and not only by providing data. So a non-extractive way of doing research. So people as co-researchers that generate the research questions, that do the data analysis, the gathering and data analysis, data visualization, ethical management of their data, et cetera, et cetera. So, but of course, this is a bit of citizen science, so it's not all. So surveys for me are not citizen science because they are extractive by definition. They don't get, I mean, I gift you my data, which is good, but why and what is what I get back and what is my motivation to provide my data is something. But for your platform, citizen science could be a super interesting thing because one of the projects of the citizen science domain is that there are a huge amount of data out there. Most of them are open available, are open science, but nobody uses it because normally projects are short term or they do not they don't have the longitudinal analysis because maybe they have a budget for 1 year, then nothing, then 1 year budget, then nothing, etc. So if we could use artificial intelligence or to find a way to model this data in a longitudinal way, then could be a very nice add-on to your platform and the citizen science community. I mean, there is people that count butterfly every day since 20 years, and I know it can be strange to think that someone is so motivated to go out every day to count the butterflies, but there are a lot, thousands. So there are also people that could be very interesting in monitoring, I don't know, the waste produced in a concert, for example, or in weighting them and having real specific data about that.
I think this is really important. Your remark about the surveys, no? Because I think this is actually what created the urgency to come up with a different kind of proposal here. I talked with a lot of organizers of music festivals in the context of the creative case study, no? And I asked them, so what are the tools, what are the mechanisms that you're using in order to identify, for example, the carbon footprint that is generated by audiences? And they all gave me the same answer, which was, we have two mechanisms. Yeah. One is surveys, and then we talked, for example, with the Galway International Arts Festival and asked, okay, what is the sample size? No? And this is very much dominated by what they can afford. Yeah. So there are surveys, and then there are sustainability angels. So these are these people who are bothering you when you're queuing for the beer in the festival, and they ask you, wouldn't you consider coming by public transport rather than with your car, and so on and so forth. All these mechanisms, established conventional mechanisms, are producing either very low quality data, because people just answer what they think you want to hear in order to get rid of you, yeah? Or don't answer at all, or whatever. Yeah? There's a tremendous feedback fatigue that can be noticed. People are constantly bothered to respond, to give feedback, to evaluate and rate whatever. No, I mean, you can't, here in Malaga, you can't order coffee, so that before paying, they already give you the card where you have to rate your experience now and give feedback and so on and so forth. Because yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, also, no, there I do it because I want to support the cleaners, the janitors. Yeah, this is one of the very few situations where I don't have any feedback fatigue. Yeah? No, so there is. And this is exactly this problem, that audiences or citizens are objects of research and not the subjects of research. So what would happen? I mean, it's not about the survey as such. I mean, maybe there can be very interesting surveys, and one can play with this format also in a very creative way, I guess. Probably Matthias has lots of examples for this, I guess. The problem is the production of subjectivity in this context, yeah, and that if you are treated like an object, it's not much fun to participate. But if you are the one who is creating the rules and has ownership of the process and can own the different ways of producing knowledge, yeah, then this is the hypothesis. Yeah, I see a potential to produce data of a much higher quality, and then if we combine this data with the data that Vikash and Giulio are generating in Eventwood, no, and with the DIPS platform, no, which is the kind of hard objective, so-called objective, unquestionable data, yeah, of credit card transactions, patterns of behavior from location-based data from the mobile phone providers, and so on and so forth. Yeah. If we combine these two extreme poles of what data can be in this context, yeah, we can develop a radically different approach. But this is only possible with yeah, I mean, processes, algorithmic processes that
help us navigating this. Yeah. Do you have survey examples?
Yeah, so one of the survey examples that just popped up my mind because you started talking about it is that I've got a friend and she's got a company that basically collects data in music festivals while she's the toilet lady. So she's basically sitting at the toilet, selling sweets, and also sometimes even cleaning the toilets, or have people that clean the toilet. But because that's a moment that people release and people are waiting, and so just to have these kind of like very practical moments, also to think about what is the place where you want to be as a researcher, it's extremely important actually, is in my experience. Yeah.
But, Seto?
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. So hi everyone. My name is not very important, but you can call me Seto. Yeah, I just want to flick into this this idea of the extraction and sort of how we obtain data. And so I'm a very optimistic guy, and I'm very fond of transparency. And so, like in sort of my dream vision of a society, basically, you know, everyone is giving away all their data, so we can have like these super precise insights of what is needed and where it's needed. And but sadly, the reality not being like that, I go actually to great length to protect myself from data extraction, and so I try to make sure that all the data that I produce, I own it. And I think this is an aspect that needs to kind of be pushed in a sort of in a pedagogical way, because if people, I don't think many people know or understand what data they are producing, and but they know that it's a great source of revenue, but they never see this revenue, and so perhaps in a different dynamic where people are on one side being made aware of the data they produce, but also are incentivized to actually share it in an ethical form, then I think we can really increase the quality of this data and create completely different terms also. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I like a lot what you said, and it goes also before to, for example, Spotify. There's on one hand, we have these companies who try to get our data to drive up their numbers, like that we consume more. And now when we think about audience science, I like it that we do this now at events, but the data that we might be interested is not the big amount of data that, for example, Spotify used. So like, where do you walk, where, like what, how long do you look at a certain product? I think when we talk about events, we have to think about the data that we want to collect, and it could be then kind of this incentive, or this, when we also think about citizen science, that the audience becomes a co-creator by giving data back to the artists. And it could be, for example, they could be asked for what the meaning, or like how it felt for them when they listened to a certain song, and or what they think the artist meant with a certain talk or a poem. And then it goes back into this forth and back reflection. And I don't really think that, for example, like companies have interest in this data, but we have a high interest in this data, and we should be very selective in deciding what we want to record. And then I'm very willing actually to give this away to them and then be part of it.
I mean, what is crucial in this context is preserving privacy and protecting the ownership of the creator of this data. I mean, do you or Adam want to? Adam is not here. No, no. Then you have to explain a little bit what Dine is working on, also in the context of Pacesetters, because I mean, indeed, we are exceeding a little bit the frame, or we are reframing Pacesetters here. So we are already thinking about, okay, what can we develop on the basis of the outcomes of Pacesetters? And with Dine, we are working on a very specific task that would basically build the basis for all sorts of transparent transactions, but with a clear focus on privacy, protection, anonymization of this data, and most importantly, the revocability.
Yes. So it's always a bit tricky to talk about what Daini is doing, because it would be so much easier to talk about what we're not doing. But essentially, yes, the red thread in our activity is to take the power that the technology generates and put it back in the hands of the people. And so specifically in Pacesetters, what we are looking at is verifiable credentials in a decentralized context. So what this means in non-geek is basically that we want to find ways to allow people to identify themselves and be in control of what data points of their identity they share. So for example, like a concrete example would be that age verification is a big hot potato today, and so we don't really need to know that you are born 1980 on the 6th of September at 8:25. We just need to know that you're over 18. And so we are developing systems that allow the citizens to do this. But also we're very keen on making sure that there is no central authority that can decide whether you can participate in this system or not. Now, of course, when it comes to authentications, we need also to have some sort of source of truth. So there are systems, but the idea here is to operate in sort of a more of a federated way. So various instances that communicate with each other. So there is no central authority, but there are still authorities, if that makes sense.
I mean, as a very concrete example, and this plays a crucial role in the context of audience science, no? Because we need a kind of quality control of the data, no?
Yes.
And very concretely, no? I mean, if I just imagine, I mean, for example, all the websites that we are running with our different projects here in the room, no? I mean, for example, Pacesetters, we are now really starting to promote this and turn this into a valuable resource. Now we have always different possibilities. You can participate anonymously, but you can also create a user account. And we are organizing events where we meet people. Yeah, so we have at the moment a kind of user base of 500 people, and we know that these people really exist, and they are. I mean, most of them upload their pictures and their bio and so on and so forth. Yeah. So how do we? I mean, another example would be the research catalog. There we have 30,000 users. Yeah. Also, not as a single bot created entity, no. But these are all people who had to go through some kind of very serious and sincere authentication process, usually by sending a copy of the passport or stuff like this that is not maybe not really GDPR compliant anymore. But these are the treasures of the future. So we should not underestimate, no, that what we are creating in these contexts, yeah, are, I mean, you call it's not only a jewel, no. I mean, these are treasures, no. So how do we use this in an ethical and responsible way, and allow future forms of creativity to be developed and modeled and modulated on this basis? Yeah, I think this is a very, very important challenge, and it doesn't matter. I mean, as much as, I mean, you're training an AI model with 100 expositions from the research catalog, and it's working very well because the data has very high quality. No? AI model does not mean that you need to know everything in the world. Yeah, I mean, You don't need a data center that is powered by a nuclear power station and so on and so forth. Yeah, there's frugal AI, yeah, that operates on a very, very low scale. Maybe it's a little bit slower. We don't care. But what is at stake, also in the interaction with the model, also in the relationship between those who are training the model and have created the content that trains the model. What is at stake are very peculiar and very precarious relationships that all are based on some kind of authentication and identification.
Yes.
We need to get back control of these processes.
Yes.
This is absolutely crucial for the future of the cultural and creative sectors and industries.
Yes. Yes, and to go back to what because we mentioned rapidly the revocation, because we often talk about the process of authenticating ourselves, and then so to be verified, right? And so this is person, but the process of revocation is equally important, and it's very rarely discussed, because in a centralized realm, somebody's, let's say, a journalist's, a digging journalist's identity could be revoked at the whim of a politician that doesn't like their work. And so we need to also implement sort of mechanism that prevents the revocation of our identities to happen arbitrarily. So yeah, I agree with you. This is very crucial. We're at a very important moment in history, really, where.
And also, sorry, I give another example. I just experienced in the last couple of weeks. We are working with the Open Syllabus Foundation at the moment. They have a treasure of 30 million syllabi that they collected over the last 15 years from universities and higher education institutions across the world. They have already revoked access to this data. In Brazil, I mean, all the data from Brazilian universities was taken out of the system in the moment when Bolsonaro took power. They are at the moment seriously considering that they have to revoke the data of American universities, because this will be used in order for the witch hunts against professors who are using terms like culture, women, and so on and so forth. No, and you can, with these tools, with the syllabus, you can easily identify whom you want to get rid of. So we have to be very, very aware that revocability goes in many different directions. Yeah, and the most important thing is who is in control of it. But no.
Yeah, that was my question to you. How can we ensure that the data we are creating inside the Pacesetters, that they are not getting hijacked and misused by others? So how do we protect this data space? Because we see it at Fraunhofer. We have attack on our intranet every day by thousands of people from all over the world, from all the secret services. And this is something what you just explained, Florian. If they want to see where are the crazy creatives and what are they doing and all these kind of things, recording our talks, putting them online, this is a big problem for the future. We don't know how Europe will be developing in the next 10 years.
And here I think this is the connection to the topic, no, yeah. To the audience science, no. I mean, I would say this is the material. I mean, we have been now talking about the material basis on which something like audience science can be imagined or developed, no. I mean, there are a lot of standards, yeah, but. There was, yeah, truly.
Yeah, Seto, right? Yeah. You were talking about data that can be traced back to the data generator, like the person, which is typical. We do it every day, just opening a browser, Chrome. We start giving data to Google in that case, and it comes back to us in terms of commercials, let's say 99%. In our platform, we are using, let's say, highly sensible data, mobility data, but they're all hashed, they're all anonymized, okay? And this is a critical aspect, because once they're anonymized, then you save yourself a lot of hassle. And of course, people are less keen to ask for revocation, because basically you don't know who they are, who these people are. There are a lot of practices carried out by telco companies to anonymize data. We basically trust them because we are not really into their algorithms. And as well as companies collecting spending data. So everything we use is anonymized. If you think about data generated at events, right? The girl at the toilet entrance, asking for surveys, and that's the moment. It's true actually, where you're really calming down, and there might be an aspect that kicks in there, which is a little bit more rationality. So your answer doesn't have to be traceable back to you. So you don't really need to know like a unique identifier. But still, answers are modulated by rationalities. And sometimes rationality is can trick you. So you might give like wrong or let's say fake answers on purpose. I did it a million times myself, actually. So what it would be nice to do is to collect data and this is very important, I think, to do it in an anonymized matter, in an anonymized fashion, I mean, that are less rational and more emotional during events, especially. So I know it might sound a bit weird, but it would be nice to collect data when people don't even know that we're collecting. The people from event participants without them knowing that we're collecting. They're spontaneous data, emotional data. It works out. It should work out pretty well during situations like events, but not only events. It can be anything that creates strong emotions. We had a sort of attempt with our company when we were mostly into the ticketing business. It was like a very simple way to say register, to record whether you were liking a certain moment during the event. So you were shaking your phone like this, like you have your phone out in your hands most of the time, taking pictures, videos, then you're shaking it. So there's a, in the phone there's a way to register the shaking of the phone. So we tried that, but of course you need to sort of have people using it. So we were collecting some interactions like this. There might be other ways to do it. So emotional data collected while people are not aware of that, they should be definitely anonymized. I mean, that's the most delicate kind of thing. It's like almost at the same level as medical data, right? So it could be a problem. But of course, sometimes you cannot anonymize them. You need to be traceable back. And then, so that's where your system actually kicks in pretty well.
There have been quite a few projects on using face recognition techniques during museum or art initiatives in which you have the camera very close or on the back of a performance, for example, and they analyze your visual expression and check it back with a set of emotions that can be traced back by how you move your face muscle. Ethically is absolutely a slippery floor, because the rationality, you say, of course, create a bias when I answer a questionnaire or I tell you something, but this is what Goffman, I mean, if we want to use Goffman metaphor of theater, I'm on stage, I'm on backstage. And it is my right to be on stage. It's my right to fake. It's my right to tell you that I like your spaghetti dish even if I ate it. Because society and social interaction are based also on what I want to share, what I don't want to share, and the fact that we are always, I mean, also during your internet navigation, there are a lot of people that block the camera because we cannot be sure that we are not observed when we use our computers. There are signals that this could be done. I mean, not this could be done technically for sure. Sometimes we have signals that this is done. So imagine Pornhub recording your face while you navigate. I mean, it's absolutely problematic from an ethical point of view. So do we have the right to do that? Is really necessary? Why don't we use participant observation? So participant observation, you are with your body, with your emotion into something, and you interact with others. And you can, the lady in the toilet doesn't need to use a survey actually, because she can hear the conversation, she can interact with the conversation, but with a clear disclaimer that I'm here and I'm observing you and I'm part of the activities. And this is why citizen science is more potential, because you are part of things and then you can report back while you are doing something and you are volunteering, sharing your thing. I think this is really something we could discuss for hours, but it's a very well-known problem, let's say.
But I mean, we call it, I think, I mean, I totally agree. There are big ethical challenges in this context. There are also, I mean, aesthetical challenges, no? Nevertheless, I think it is incredibly interesting to explore these forms of involuntary participation, yeah? Because they might give us access to what we suggest to call the collective unconscious of an event or an institution. But this data is, I mean, is not so much generated from what people actually do or say that they do, yeah? It might be much more interesting in this context what they are not doing. This would be, and it would be an ethical approach towards it. But I mean, this is basically what we are discussing under the slogan of audience science. But Albert,
I only wanted to add, because I like this medical example very much, and this refers also to the example you that sometimes you need to know that somebody is over 80. But it's not important when his birthday is, right? So the birthday is important for Google to send you a birthday card with a commercial or something like that, yeah? And it works pretty good to collect all this data in medical environments, so to say. For example, and we wouldn't like to miss, let's say, AI analysis in MRT or something like that. It works very well. So, and this collects all this data. And so I think what we could do is define the purpose, how we use the data. Yeah. So we do not need the birthday. We need maybe over 80. Yeah. Walking, not walking, whatever, yeah? All this, and I think if we go now back to this relationship between, let's say in an artwork, for example, theater, yeah, it has a long tradition of a collective process, yeah, where people really are willing and like to share all these data, yeah, the feelings and everything like that, yeah, and I think it's super complicated, really, but there is a collective process what is really interesting for us in it, yeah, and we lose it somehow when we have all these borders, yeah, and the borders are really for good sometimes, because people are annoyed to give the data because everybody steals your data, you know, and everybody knows why they are stealing. Yeah, it's a big business, and you do not want to be part of it. But audience science could be, let's say, a kind of a redefinition. I would like to. It's not a definition; it's a redefinition of the spectator, the audience, as a co-author, like a co-researcher, somebody, we develop something together, yeah? And I think it's totally underestimated that the collective process in AI, it's a super important one, Yeah, and for example, because we talked to each other and we said we would like to continue the talk from before because it was so interesting. But when we for example talk about rural areas, then we can bring all these feelings, the talks in a collective process. Yeah, and I think this is the interesting part for me personally in this. So, a lot of people disagree, hopefully.
Okay, just to add a quick note, very interesting. I think if we think about the audience as a co-researcher, co-author of the research, something that is also probably really important is to make the audience aware of why we are collecting the data. And that's something very central, as much as find ways to share the value of the data that they produce and the value of the research that comes from the data, ultimately. Because at that point, I think people are more willing to engage in an active way. And that's also two ways to make them not object, but active part of the process. So definitely make the audience aware of why we are collecting the data, why they are doing the research, but also find ways to share the value.
So I like very much this idea of theater, for example, because a theater play is never only what the people are on stage doing. It's always a collective process. So one night you have an audience and you have no idea what they are thinking and feeling, and then the people on stage are absolutely poor. Yeah, and I remember very well. Maybe you remember it too. For example, what Peter Brook did in the 60s. Yeah, so he brought the audience in the rehearsals. Yeah, he was maybe not the first one who did it, but he wrote this book, you know. And so it was also new for theater and for art in this time. Yeah, that we include these feelings of the audience. We prepare this dialogue. So. And this is a little bit what we did here too, right? So it's not people on the stage and the audience in the dark. It's more a circle and it's an exchange, yeah. And of course we have a new medium and we have to learn how to deal, yeah. And we have to get rid of all these big 7 companies who are stealing our datas, yeah, and doing shit with it, yeah. And we can learn it from the arts, I think.
Yeah. So one of the just a little bit of background is that I worked in the last 20 years with European capitals of culture. I worked with more than 25 of them, and what happens in these cultural capitals? They always need communication strategies. And if I look back in these 20 years. One thing that always remained was this idea of communication strategies where you are sending out messages that resonate, that come back to you in a way that they talk back to you. And so over these 20 years, I saw there a big change where actually people started realizing that it's not what you say that you are, but it's what you do that you are. And so, because and that's what data can show. That's what data can show, and that's what AI then starts using in sending. Not like 20 years ago we were sending out 3 or 4 campaigns, but nowadays we're sending out 25,000 messages because. And that if that is ethical or not, there is always the problem with that. But we're sending out more and more messages because yeah, the audience is doing more different things with what you try to establish. Yeah. But at the end of the day, this resonance has not changed much in my view. And that's what we forget. That has been a stable factor in the way of how it. But what has helped us is that recently because this is projects of like in the series of like between 50 and 90 million euros that is spent over a period of like 7 years, you could say. Mostly in the peak year, there's like between 20 and 30 million spent in one go. But so there is a real interest also to see what's the impact and does it work, what we are. So the mental change, the small change in mentality that we were aiming for, is that getting there? And there more and more we start aiming at data that is talking about moods, and artists are able to visualize those moods, and so also to find ways of basically setting up artistical interventions that can already then, when the event is taking place, can give back these moods, and it can be as simple as basically making the lamps. So you organize an event with 80,000 people, and you just start changing the color of the lightning on the street because the mood is changing in certain path, and with data you can start showing this. But that kind of integrated creativity and use of data also to give it back at the moment that it's happening, I think there is a real push forward.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I want to share about the collateral impact of this data collection, a story of the past, when they started with the Tidbit wrists. I don't know if you know this brand Tidbit. They started measuring the heart rate of people, and they sold millions of them. And suddenly there was a leak of data from this company, because before it was not considered sensitive data, it was not so protected. And then out of this data, we have the best knowledge about sexuality in the planet, because it's exactly, as you were saying, it's not what you say, it's what, because people were lying about their sexuality, but the orgasm pattern in your heart rate is so recognizable that is the only way that we have millions of data about that. So I believe that we have two strategies for this. We can silo the data and we say, okay, only we have this data and we are the ones who are going to be able to deal with this data in a responsible way. Or as he was sharing before, we open completely the data and we change the economic system in a way that there's no incentive to use this in an evil way and with an economic interest, creating funnels and monopolies of using these things. But these things are for the benefit of the whole humanity, and then we will all be willing to share our sexuality data and everything, because it's going to be used by all of us together. So I think only these two strategies. Either we silo these things with laws that are super, super strict, and I really doubt that we are able to do this, or we fully open, but then we have to change something much higher than this, that it might look like it's very, very more complicated to do, but I don't believe so. I think that's exactly the only bullet that we can use to transform all these data thing.
I wanted to ask something about the ethical implications of the usage of facial expression tracking and recognition, because we mentioned already some of these criticalities, and I think the topic is pretty close to what we deal with in our project involving AI and data set training and whatnot, because these technologies are so powerful that at the very least they are divisive in their outcomes and implications, especially now where we are attending to like an increasing concern regarding racial profiling in so-called democratic states. And yeah, I'm gonna stop here because it's already a lot. So as artists, authors, creatives that can get their hands on very powerful tools, should we engage with like finding a way to change the narrative, or to actively fight the wrong usage of these things? Like, should we take a stance somehow? And it's something I ask myself even. And the second question is more technical, because I was wondering, like, what happens when there is tracking of an audience's emotions and like, I don't know, gut reactions to a certain stimulus, and what happens when you do that and somehow you get a false positive for whichever reason? Maybe it's a techno concert and people took MDMA, so their facial expressions are not consistent with their feelings or whatever. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this audience science is a startup by itself right now. So, yeah, I understand, you know, the issues with data sovereignty, and I think we shouldn't be scared of data being collected, considering that we are talking about this audience science startup. I think what is very important. Yes, I think what is very important is the value proposition of collecting the data, and who is this value proposition for? And I think see, as a part of my journey with you, Florian, and Pacesetters, right? There is one particular use case that really, I think it created a lot of emotions, and that was this queer bar which you took me in Brussels. And this lady who quit her job from I think she's from IT professional, right? Yeah, and she's running this bar in I think what used to be a very, you know, an area which was, yeah, not so rich, and it was going down. And then she created this very secure space with events and bars. And then over the years, I understood that the real estate went up because of people like her who bring in a lot of people and crowd flow. And now she is being like asked to leave. Like every day she is receiving notices from the police. Like, yeah, I mean, that's what we heard from her. So how can we use this data to enable people like her to show that, hey, I brought in a lot of value, not only to the people, like not only to the audience, but the real estate and so forth. And I think these kind of use cases are extremely important. And also, I think we discussed about a small town like Ganagasil. You know, how can we use this crowd flow to move high value audience or customers from these urban areas to the small town, you know, and create good income, you know, not like over tourism or whatever. I think this is very important to consider when we, yeah, when and if we take this journey forward.
I would just like to flick in, because you said about these false positives, and I mean, maybe slight risk that I'm going to be a little bit unpopular here, considering the topic, but we also have to remember that data is a great source of knowledge, but it's not necessarily the source of truth. We are humans. We are not the data we produce. So, like, we really need to keep the focus on our humanity. Data is a great tool. We have to respect it. We have to use it wisely, but it's not everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exactly what I think too. I was thinking that maybe, you know, sometimes when we do our electroacoustic music concerts and stuff like this, it may happen that the average audience looks surprised when they have to deal with an unknown and never decoded before acoustic event, and they familiarize with it over the course of an event or more events, hopefully. But sometimes also as humans, like first of all, in regard to sound, which is our field, some stimuli, they are processed over like a certain time. Like you have a certain reaction that changes over the course of the processing, and afterwards there's also like the deeper kind of processing that has probably a longer time span. And it's, I don't know, think about the self you present to the world versus the self that's the emotional self that reacts instinctively to things. And those are two possibly both true or not necessarily absolutely true versions of the same person. And it might be interesting possibly to close the gap between these two worlds with the projection of yourself that you willfully want to, you know, like communicate to the outer world and your gut reaction, let's say. You know, like we might be a combination of what we want to project and what we feel at the moment. Thanks.
Thank you. So just a quick note on this. We mentioned the possibility of engaging the audience in a rational way. So they're aware of the process and what's happening, and they're very rational about their replies. And the possibility of engaging them without their knowledge. So the ability to collect very valuable unconscious data. Perhaps in the middle between these two approaches, that's what I was doing human-computer interaction research and performance studies. What we used to do as researcher was introduce the general scope of the research beforehand to the person, and obviously giving all the information about they could withdraw at any moment, and you know, all, giving them the information about the activity, but not to the point that they were completely rational about all the tasks and the meaning and the reasons for all the tasks that were taking place during the performance study. So there was a general context in introductions, so they were aware that the study was taking place, and that was, from my perspective, an ethical good starting point. Then there was the activity, and part of the activity they were not conscious about what was happening. And in the end, we were giving all the rest of the information, and they were able to decide whether to withdraw their data, withdraw their consent, or proceed and having their contribution to be used in the research. And I think this could be in the middle approach that could solve some of the ethical concerns.
Can I make a value proposition? Because we have 2 more sessions today in which we can pick up these questions. One is about independent digital infrastructures, which really is the underlying challenge of everything that we are discussing. And then the final, and we really see this not only as a wrapping up session, but I mean more the kind of how do we continue also beyond the frame of Pacesetters, the final discussion on artistic intelligence, which fortunately was mentioned several times by the Vice President. So we feel very encouraged. Shall we have lunch? Because otherwise I see the danger that the others eat everything. So let's have lunch, and we continue at 4 o'clock in the digital infrastructure discussion. But thank you very much. This was super interesting.